Nobody talks about this, but one of the biggest mysteries in Harlem street history isn't just about money, power, or betrayal. It's about one painful question. Why was it so hard for Rich Porter to get the ransom money to save his little brother? A lot of people look at Rich Porter's story and assume the answer is simple. They think Rich was getting money. He was one of Harlem's biggest hustlers. He had connections. He had influence. Why didn't people just help him? But the truth is much deeper than that, and honestly, much darker. Before we get into it, let me say this. I try to tell these stories fairly. If you're already locked in, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. You're about to hear a story most people don't break down like this. Some people say any criticism of Rich Porter means you're biased or disrespecting his legacy. That's not true. I give credit where credit is due. Rich Porter, Alpo Martinez, and their circle absolutely made an impact in Harlem. They changed the culture. They were flashy, stylish, and influential. They drove luxury cars, wore expensive clothes, and represented a level of street success that many young hustlers admired. They set trends. They had money. They had power. But power doesn't make you untouchable. And that's where many people misunderstand Rich Porter's situation. When Rich's little brother was kidnapped, the streets didn't automatically rally around him. Why? Because nobody fully understood what was happening. And that matters. A lot of people point to photos of Rich standing next to other major hustlers like Eric Von Zip Martin and assume that meant deep loyalty. But a photo means very little. Let's be real. In street culture, people take pictures together all the time. That doesn't mean they trust each other. That doesn't mean they're close friends. That definitely doesn't mean they're willing to risk everything for each other. And helping Rich at that moment meant taking a massive risk. Most people didn't know if Rich had brought the problem on himself. Did he owe somebody money? Was this connected to another beef? Was this retaliation? Nobody knew. And smart hustlers don't jump into someone else's war without understanding the whole picture, especially when kidnapping and ransom are involved. That alone made people hesitate. But that wasn't even the biggest issue. Here's the twist most people don't talk about. Rich Porter was under heavy federal investigation. That changed everything. At that time, Rich was extremely hot. Law enforcement was watching him closely. Phones were tapped. Movements were monitored. Associates were being tracked. The feds were everywhere. And once that happens, people start distancing themselves fast. Not because they hate you, because survival comes first. Think about it. If someone like Eric Von Zip gave Rich $20,000, $50,000, maybe even $100,000, how would that look? To the average person, maybe it looks like helping a friend. To the FBI, it looks like evidence. It looks like conspiracy. It looks like money movement between criminal organizations. That's dangerous. The feds weren't stupid. They were trying to connect every dot possible. And Rich made things worse without realizing it. At one point, Rich contacted associates connected to Fritz, and those communications reportedly helped draw federal attention directly toward that organization. That meant more people were suddenly under a microscope. That's huge, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Fritz helped Rich as much as he felt he safely could, but he also reportedly told Rich something important. Lay low. Get out of town. Let things cool off. That was solid advice. But Rich didn't listen. And this is where personality matters. Rich Porter was his own man. He was young, confident, proud, stylish, and like many successful young hustlers, he liked doing things his own way. That kind of mindset helps you rise. But sometimes it also causes your downfall, because pride can stop you from accepting help. Imagine being one of the flyest young men in Harlem. You've got money, cars, jewelry, respect. People know your name. Then, suddenly, life flips. Now you need help. Now you need favors. Now you're vulnerable. That's hard for anyone, especially a young man built on image and pride. A lot of people always ask the same question. If Rich was getting that much money, where did it all go? That question comes up every time someone successful hits hard times. We do it today too. Look at social media. Someone posts luxury vacations, watches, cars, designer clothes. Then one day they're struggling financially. what's the first thing people say? Wait, what happened to all that money? It's almost automatic. But money, especially street money, is rarely stable. That's something people forget. Street money comes fast, but it also disappears fast. You can be up today and down tomorrow, then back up again. That's the cycle. Even millionaires have money problems. The difference is their problems are bigger. Rich Porter had money problems too. And during his crisis, people around him were watching. Some were supportive, some weren't. And here's another ugly truth. Not everyone smiling at you wants to see you win. Some people secretly compete with you. They shake your hand, they hug you, they praise you. But deep down, they're waiting for you to fall. You see this today all over social media. People watch everything you do. They know your vacation spots. They know your new car. They know your lifestyle. But they never publicly support you, never like your posts, never celebrate you openly, yet somehow they know everything. That's hidden competition. And it's dangerous. Rich had people around him like that too. That's why some major hustlers pulled back. People like Eric Von Zip and others may have had the resources to help, but helping Rich meant stepping into a federal spotlight. And there was another terrifying possibility. What if the people asking for ransom were connected to someone in your own network? What if you unknowingly fund the very people targeting him? That risk was real, very real. So many stayed away. And as if things weren't bad enough, betrayal came from inside the family. Rich had a cousin named Peanut, and according to many accounts, Peanut was cooperating with federal authorities. Think about that. Rich was doing business with someone close to him, while that same person was allegedly helping build a case against him. That's devastating. Imagine taking heat from law enforcement, enemies, kidnappers, and betrayal from your own blood, all at the same time. That's overwhelming for anyone. And Rich was only 24 years old. 24. People love sitting in comment sections saying, he should have done this. He should have handled it better. He made bad decisions. Maybe, but it's easy to judge when you're safe behind a screen. It's different when you're living it. Rich was still young, still learning, still trying to survive. Trying to save your kidnapped little brother while federal agents are watching your every move? That's psychological torture. Nobody should have to face that. Now imagine if all of Harlem had come together and pooled money for the ransom. Sounds good in theory, right? Not necessarily. That could have made things worse. Because once kidnappers see massive resources available, they raise the price. Simple. Pay once. Demand more. That's why even money wasn't a guaranteed solution. Then there's another layer most people ignore. Rich's legal problems were growing fast. The Virginia situation alone could have changed everything. Because if Rich had survived long enough to face all the evidence building against him, he may have been looking at serious prison time. Not a light sentence. Serious time. 20 years or more. And here's something people rarely discuss honestly. Prison tests everyone. Everyone. It's easy to say what you would do. It's harder when it becomes real. Rich had done shorter bids before. That's one thing. But decades? That's different. Imagine being 24 years old. You're living fast. Money everywhere. Luxury cars. Designer clothes. Beautiful women. Freedom. Kids depending on you. Then suddenly, someone tells you, you may spend the next 20 years in prison. That changes everything. Now you're not thinking about money. You're thinking about survival, about your children growing up without you, about losing your freedom, about eating when told, sleeping when told, being locked in with men every day. No freedom, no movement, no control. Nobody wants that. And that's why Rich Porter's story is so tragic. Because when you really examine it, you realize he wasn't just fighting one enemy. He was fighting multiple enemies at once. Kidnappers, federal agents, hidden rivals, betrayal from family, and possibly people close to him are setting traps. That's too much pressure for most grown men, let alone a 24-year-old. And maybe that's the biggest lesson here. Street success looks glamorous from the outside. Cars, money, jewelry, respect. But behind all that is paranoia, stress, betrayal, and constant danger. The higher you rise, the more enemies you create. Rich Porter's story proves something many don't want to admit. Sometimes having money doesn't save you. Sometimes power doesn't protect you. Sometimes the people around you aren't who you think they are. And sometimes the biggest threat isn't your enemies. It's the people closest to you. That's what makes this story so heartbreaking. Rich Porter wasn't just losing control of a business. He was losing trust in everything around him. And once trust is gone in the streets, you're already in danger. Because in that world, hesitation can cost your life. And betrayal almost always comes with a smile first. But maybe the saddest part of Rich Porter's story is this. For all the money, all the fame, all the street respect, when the pressure became unbearable, Rich was still just a young man trying to hold everything together. That's something people forget. We talk about street legends like they were superheroes, like they had no fear, no emotions, no weaknesses. But at the end of the day, Rich Porter was human. He felt pressure. He felt stress. He felt betrayed. And he felt pain. Imagine waking up every day knowing your little brother's life hangs in the balance. Imagine every phone call making your heart race. Imagine not knowing who to trust. Was this person really trying to help? Or were they feeding information to the feds? Or worse, to your enemies? That kind of paranoia can destroy even the strongest person. And paranoia in the streets is different. Because sometimes your paranoia is justified. Sometimes people really are plotting against you. Sometimes your own circle really is compromised. That's why Rich's situation became almost impossible. He wasn't operating in a clean environment. Every move carried risk. Every conversation mattered. Every dollar exchange could be tracked. And the more desperate you become, the more mistakes you make. That's human nature. Desperation clouds judgment. It makes you emotional. It makes you impulsive. And in the streets, emotional decisions can be deadly. That's another lesson from Rich Porter's story. Sometimes your biggest enemy isn't lack of money. It's panic. When panic enters the equation, smart people make bad decisions. That happens in business. It happens in relationships. And it definitely happens in the streets. Rich had spent years building an empire. But empires built in illegal worlds are fragile. They can collapse fast. One bad deal, one betrayal, one informant, one wiretap. That's all it takes. And once the walls start closing in, you begin seeing the truth about everyone around you. Who's loyal? Who's scared? Who's waiting for your downfall? Who's secretly relieved that you're no longer on top? Success attracts attention, but it also attracts envy. And envy is dangerous because it hides well. Not every enemy looks aggressive. Some enemies clap for you in public while praying for your downfall in private. Some smile in your face while studying your weaknesses. That's why betrayal hurts more than opposition. At least with an enemy, you know where they stand. With betrayal, the attack comes from trust. And Rich experienced that firsthand. That's what makes his story so tragic. Not just the money, not just the violence, not just the federal pressure, the betrayal. Because betrayal hits differently when it comes from family, friends, or people you built with. And sadly, that's often how street stories end. Not always by strangers, but by insiders, by people who had access, people who knew routines, people who knew weaknesses. That's why trust is everything in that life. Lose trust, and everything starts collapsing. And maybe that's the real lesson behind Rich Porter's rise and fall. Street power can make you feel untouchable. Money can make you feel invincible. Reputation can make you feel feared. But none of those things guarantee peace. None of those things guarantee loyalty. And none of those things guarantee tomorrow. Real wealth isn't just money. Real wealth is peace of mind. Being able to sleep without fear. Being able to trust your circle. Being able to protect your family without looking over your shoulder. That's real success. Because what good is millions of dollars if every day feels like survival? What good is power if everyone around you might betray you? That's the hard truth. Rich Porter's story remains one of Harlem's most tragic cautionary tales. A brilliant hustler, a young king, a rising legend. But even kings fall when betrayal enters the kingdom. If you made it this far, drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Do you believe Rich Porter could have saved his brother? Or was the situation already too far gone? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this breakdown. It helps the channel grow and pushes these stories further into the algorithm. Also, watch the video below for more true crime videos and check out the merch in the description to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.